Hey, it's Dave Lawrence. Thanks for listening and being here. I appreciate it and hope you're awesome today. We have a real treat as we welcome back a gifted artist who was a guest in 2006. He returns as his New York Times best-selling hardcover autobiography becomes a paperback, out now in stores where you buy books new and online at Amazon.com. From Harper, earlier this year, we spoke with his bandmate and our friend, both from GNR and Velvet Revolver, Duff McKagan, making this conversation today even more special. It's a real pleasure to welcome back the legendary Slash. Aloha, Slash.
Hey, man, what's happening?
A big mahalo for taking some time for us, and congrats on releasing this thing.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's funny because, I mean, the book came out, obviously, I can't remember when it was exactly. But
about a year or so ago.
Yeah, and so now it's coming out in paperback form, and they sent me a copy of it a couple days ago, and it's just as big as the regular hardback.
Kind of defeats the purpose of going with a paperback if you make it
Right.
that big. But such a cool book because it opened up, your life to us, and when I see books like this, especially yours, which has a lot of insight and it's a new kind of, it's very, you tell it all, and you do it in a way that is more than candid. There's some of the people that you talk about in the book, some of whom are your close friends like Duff, but others along the stops in your life who come up in the book Slash. Were any of them surprised or maybe even shocked by the way that you described them or they ended up being portrayed?
Because it was so candid, I was actually surprised at the lack of. The only people I really heard from were ex-girlfriends. Because I don't think they necessarily might have known what I was thinking, and one of them I'm sure I'll probably never talk to again, but the other one actually sought me out and called me, and I hadn't talked to her in a long time, and she was like, "What's up?" And I was like, and she goes, I was younger then, and this and that, and I was like, oh God, I was just spewing out the shit as I remembered it, so just don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. But other than that, everybody else, it's hard to really argue with, at least my perception of what went on. It's as truthful as I could possibly be, and it's pretty damn accurate for somebody who's stoned 95% of the time.
Well, I think it goes to show that doesn't blur the memory as bad as maybe people think, because some of the details and certainly.
I was surprised how it came back, because a lot of that, I'd say 75% of that stuff is stuff that I don't really think about too often. And the guy Anthony Boza, who I wrote the book with, really was instrumental in helping me pull that stuff out and patient enough with me so that to wait until I could get the whole picture together.
I know what you mean. Our mutual friend, actually, the guy who got me the last time I spoke with you, Carmine Appice, set up the interview. He's writing his book, and he was telling me all about how sometimes things will come to him through finding one story and really thinking about it, or taking a look at some material, and it sort of has to, you open doors in your mind, if you will.
Exactly. There's a whole thing to it. It's like you look at it at first, and it seems like the most daunting task you ever faced, and then once you get going, it starts to trigger all these little things, and it becomes sort of like a floodgate situation. When I was finished, the last edit that I did on the book, I remember really well, because I was on the road and it was like 5:30 in the morning, and I'd finally sort of signed off on it and was preparing to send it back, and I realized at that point that I had so much more stuff that had come to me in the last month prior to the end of the edit.
Wow.
That I could have kept going, because all this new stuff started coming to me. But
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, it's a floodgate of material, and that's what that's a cool thing that happens, and hopefully it makes me wonder, are there stories that you thought of leaving out? Like, is there anything in there that you do regret having put in there? You mentioned the one with the girl. Would that be it? There's nothing else that you regret having mentioned?
There's nothing in there that I actually regret, and even if I did, once you do something, I don't believe in regretting it. I think it's a waste of time, because what's done is done. But there was a lot of stuff that I consciously left out, because in writing a rock and roll autobiography, one of the things that I learned when I was a kid, in the few sort of rock and roll biographies and or autobiographies, was the sensationalistic aspect and the tendency to brag about the sort of like bad, cool things that you might have done, and this and that and the other. And I didn't want to go that direction. It's real easy to do. So like, oh, I partied here and I did that and I fucked this many girls and blah blah blah. So I tried to keep that to a minimum. And then there was a lot of stuff that I didn't want to incriminate anybody. A lot of stuff that's personal to other people, and probably or the relationship between me and other people, that I didn't want to embellish or even establish at all. So I left a lot of stuff out. So it's a real sort of like, people go, oh yeah, you really bared your soul, and I'm like, nah. I never wanted to write a book in the first place, and if I'm going to have to write a book, which there was a reason behind writing the book, I'm not going to do the tell-all, because that's just not me.
No, it has a positive approach, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, the basic stuff that you need to know is in there. And
right.
a bunch of other extra shit just to make it entertaining, but not overwhelmingly so, I hope.
No, not at all. And it gives some insight. Like with your artist and designer parents, some of the fascinating details that we learn about you include, your superstar musical neighbors. And as an adult, when you look at you, and you're a real fan too through the years, you've maintained that ability. Take us through how you had a life like that and how it's influenced you today.
That's a good question. I think when I was a kid, I think I've always been, even when I was really young, where I was one of those people that just observed a lot.
Right.
And so, yeah, there was a lot of craziness, but there was also a lot of really extreme sensitivity and a lot of artistic stuff going on when I was a kid that sort of warranted all the craziness. And I just sort of observed all that, and I recognized what I did like and what I didn't like. And I never, it's all subconscious, but looking back on it. And I think probably the exposure to all that sort of, insanity on an artistic level sort of taught me how to deal with the same kind of stuff now, and a lot of things about how I am as a person that I don't want to be compared to what I was what I was exposed to when I was younger, all the way up until even now. I see guys out there doing stuff that are peers of mine that I'm like, man, that's not cool. So I consciously, I think, sort of knew better on certain things, and I think a lot of that had to do with dealing like guys with Sylvester and some other real serious prima donna people back in the day.
But it taught you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other aspects of it that different branches of influence that went on. So.
No.
Yeah, it definitely had an effect on how I deal with stuff now.
And I mean, it's funny the way that leads me right into where I was. The next thing I wanted to really hear you talk about a bit. Did David Bowie really actually say to you, being a rock star is the intersection of who you are and who you want to be?
No, that's Anthony's line. It's not actually a quote.
Okay.
It was more Anthony's sort of writer kind of influence.
His summary of it, if you will.
Yeah.
What's a great
His perception of my perception of rock star. Yeah.
What's a great David Bowie story that makes you smile? Like a personal thing.
Really, the most vivid memory I have of David that really sticks out to me was, it really blew my mind. He'd come over and he had this little SL 350 Mercedes convertible that he rented, and then he also had a house that he rented. And for some reason that was really trippy to me, because I didn't really think past, him being sort of present right there in the moment, so I assumed he lived around the block. But he came from England, and he would come into town and he would hang out for a couple of weeks, and he'd rent a house and he'd rent a car and party and do all this stuff. And it just, for some reason, I thought that was like really sort of like glamorous in a funny kind of way. And that's and he had this, obviously electric red hair, and he just, his whole demeanor was very original and unique to him. And he was a great guy. He still is, really, as cool as anybody would want to think that David is. But my first perceptions of him were sort of like almost bigger than life, I guess. And I didn't really know that much about him, but I loved the record that was out at the time, which was Young Americans. And,
wow. What an influence. I mean, and then to be able to look back on it from, where you're at.
Oh, yeah, it's weird, too, because, I obviously I still know him, so it's hard for me to sort of put him put him into that perspective. You know what I mean? To like
Sure.
really step outside and look at him from the outside.
Because he's still like a friend. He's like a family
Yeah.
friend.
So, but it's easy for me to look back at how I looked at him when I was little. You know.
That's really something. I'll end with this / a final question for you. If you could, can you share some of your views on philanthropy and some of the reasons why your website proudly declares you to be a philanthropist?
Well, you know, a lot of that has to do with just wanting to do things, you know. And that wasn't my particular wording either. That was when I saw that on the website, I said, that's a little heavy, you know. I like to help, you know, people do stuff. I like to get involved with a lot of things that people are doing, and I like to put out different things and whatnot. So I think that's where that came from.
Cool.
I think that was an outsider's look at me.
Well, there's the impression that it leaves. Well, I appreciate getting to talk with you, and thank you so much for being available.
Yeah, it was good talking to you, man. Have a good one.
You too. Take care. Aloha.
Bye.
Aloha / and you're listening to my good buddy Dave Lawrence. Aloha / and you're listening to my good buddy Dave Lawrence. And it's my favorite time of day. Hey, Dave, it's 4:20.